Hey guys, this is Lily Lee and I am your piano teacher for this section, and today we are going to learn what are triads. So first, triads are made up of three notes played on top of each other. So they typically look something like this, with a note here in red is called a bottom note, which is also called a root, and a middle note, which is also called a third, and finally a top note, which is called a fifth. So now we want to learn how to play a triad on the piano. So in fact, the basic music triad is very easy to create, and all you need to know is your alphabet and how to count to 8. So first, let's look at our example here. So in this example, we start from a note C, and then the second note is E, and then we reach G. So if you use your alphabet, you count from C, D, E, F, G. So that corresponds to what I told you. The first note, the third note, and the third note, and also the fifth note. So C is the first note, and then you have D, and then E is your third note, and then F, fourth note, and G is your fifth note. So you will find that if you build triads starting on different white notes, and they will sound very different. Let's try it on the keyboard. So now let's try our example triad on a piano. Remember, our notes are C, E, and G. And that sounds very happy, right? Now I'm going to play another triad for you, but this time I will start from a different note. I will instead start from A. Does it sound like a little bit sad? Yes. This is because, as I have said before, if we start from a different note, the number of semitones are different between each note. And it's because of this difference in intervals, it will cause you to create different types of triad. So now we're going to talk about what are different types of triad. Now let's see how the triads are different. So our first topic is major and minor triads. And let's use the example that I have in the video. So as you may notice, these shaded keys are C, E, and G. So now let's count how many semitones are between these notes. Let's start with C and label it as 0. From 0 to the first black key here, that makes 1 semitone. From this one to D, that's second semitone. And then you count 1, 2, that's third semitone, fourth semitone. And notice here, it is two white keys that are adjacent to each other. So two adjacent white keys are 2 semitones, which is also a tone. So that's our fifth. And then now let's go to our 6th semitone and 7th semitone here. Now let's look at the minor triad. So now let's talk about how the triads are different. So our first topic is the major and minor triad. Now let's label this piano. So we have it here, the first note. I will label it in red. So we have C and E and G. Start from C, we give it 0. So we want to count how many semitones are between C and G. So 1, 0, and then when you reach this black key, that makes 1 semitone, 2 semitones, 3 semitones, 4 semitones, 5 semitones, 6 semitones, 7 semitones. Now let's go to our minor chord, or the sad chord. So we start from A, that's a C, and then E. And we use the same way. 0 here. 0, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7. Okay, so the difference between the bottom and the top 5th notes, which is the 5th notes, stay the same. So both have 7 semitones between the top and the bottom notes. So what's the difference? You notice that? For our second note here, the E, it corresponds to a number 4. And for our sad tone here, the C, the third note corresponds to a number 3. So that's what causes the happy or the major chord to be happy, but the sad chord to be but the minor chord to be sad. So let's try to find out what the differences are between the major and minor chord. So as you can see here, by comparison, we found that both have 7 semitones, but the difference lies in the third note, where in the first major or happier triad, we have our third note, E, corresponding to number 4. But then for the minor or our sad tone, we have our third note, C, corresponds to a 3. So we conclude that the change is in the interval between the bottom root and the middle third notes. So we found out that in the major triad here, there are 4 semitones between C and E, and 4 semitones makes a major third. So that's where the happy sound comes from. But for the minor chord, there are only 3 semitones between A and C. So 3 semitones equals a minor third. So that's where the sad tone comes from. So now, we can remember by another way. A major triad has a major third between root and the third note, followed by a minor third here. Let's write in green. But for the minor triad, it's the reverse of the major triad. We have a minor third between the root and the third note, followed by a major third between the third and the 5th note. Here are some examples of major triad. Our first example is the A major triad. Let's play it. Here is our major third, followed by a minor third. Our next example is an E major triad. What's the major third? That's our major triad. And then an E flat major triad. And finally, our A flat major triad. Similarly, there are also many other examples, such as and they sound very big and broad. So these examples of major triads all begin on different notes, but the intervals between the root, the third, and the fifth notes of the triad remain the same. It is always a major third followed by a minor third. So as a result, they are all major triads. Now, we are going to learn some minor triad examples. Our first example is the E minor triad. That sounds a little bit sad. So we see here it is a minor third. And you may wonder what the major third would be. So that would be, that's a minor third, and that's a major third. So we have our minor third followed by a major third. That gives our E minor triad. And now it's the G minor triad. Where's the second note? C minor triad. And A flat minor triad. So once again, these are examples of minor triad, and they all begin on different notes, but it's the intervals between the root, the third, and the fifth notes. They remain the same, but it's always a minor third followed by a major third. So as a result, they are all minor triad. Okay, so we've learned the major triad and minor triad, and they are not too complicated. So there are also other two types of triads that I want to introduce to you. So the other two types of triad, both of which have a really slightly unnerving sound quality. The first one is a diminished triad, and this is a variation of a minor triad. So I will use this keyboard to show you how to create a diminished triad. All you need to do is play a minor triad and then lower the top note, which is this one, circled in green, by one semitone. So one semitone is the distance between this black key and this white key. Now, there are only 6 semitones between the bottom and top notes of the triad, and this is called a diminished fifth. So by doing so, you have built a triad by using 2 minor thirds on top of each other. So we will play this note as the root, the third note, and our top note becomes this, the black key. We're going to hear some examples of diminished triad, and listen carefully to how scary and tense they sound. Our first one is a C diminished triad. So to build this one, we will count up a minor third, 3 semitones, and which takes it to E flat, and then we count up another minor third, 3 semitones from E flat, and this takes us to G flat. Ooh, that sounds really, really unnerving. So now we have 2 minor triad building on top of each other. Sorry, I mean 2 minor third. And here are a couple of other examples. The E diminished triad. And G diminished triad. So it's obvious that you can see from the example, these intervals is always a minor third, followed by another minor third. As a result, a sketchy diminished triad is produced. Then it comes to our last type of triad, which is augmented triad. So to create an augmented triad, we play a major triad and then raise the top note up by a semitone. This is just the opposite of what we have done to creating an diminished triad. So now, instead of 7 semitones, we now have 7 plus 1 semitone, which is 8 semitones separating the top and the bottom note. And this is called an augmented fifth. So our last note will end up be here. And that gives us 7 semitones. This sounds even more unnerving and is a little bit mysterious. So, in other words, what we have done is to build a major third on root note and then another major third on top. That gives you an augmented triad. So you can imagine that as like you're overlapping or adding more things to your original chord. So to build an augmented triad on C, we count up a major third, which is 4 semitones. This takes us from C to E. And then we count up another major third from E, which is also another 4 semitones. And this leads to G sharp here. This is a major third. And another major third takes us to G sharp. It sounds a little bit unnerving. And there are 2 more examples of augmented triad. The G augmented triad is a sound like this. The first major third. I think the notes sound a little bit like they're twigged. And G augmented triad. Oh, sorry, E augmented triad. Once again, each triad is built using a major third followed by another major third to produce the augmented triad. So, I hope that makes sense. Overall, we learned about major triad, minor triad, and we found out that both of them contain 7 semitones between the top note and the bottom notes. For major triad, there is a major third from the root to the second note, and then the third note, and then there is a minor third from the third note to the fifth note. So to build an augmented triad on C, we count up a major third, which is 4 semitones. This takes us from C to E, and then we count up another major third from E, which is also another 4 semitones, and this leads to G sharp here. This is a major third, and another major third takes us to G sharp. It sounds a little bit unnerving. And there are 2 more examples of augmented triad. The G augmented triad is a sound like this. The first major third. I think the notes sound a little bit like they're twigged. And G augmented triad. Oh, sorry, E augmented triad. Once again, each triad is built using a major third followed by another major third to produce the augmented triad. So, I hope that makes sense. Overall, so we have learned major triad, minor triad, diminished triad, and augmented triads today. Remember, for major triad, they are formed by a major third followed by a minor third. And for a minor triad, they are formed by a minor third followed by another major third. So both triads have 7 semitones between their first note and the top note. As for diminished and augmented triads, they create unnerving sound that makes us feel uncomfortable because they either have one more or one less semitones. So for diminished triads, we have one less semitone, so that we have a total of 6 semitones between the bottom note and the top note. You can think of that like something is diminishing or disappearing, so you are like retrieving back to your starting note. As for augmented, it's something like making it bigger and adding something extra to that. So then you will increase that semitones into 8 semitones. And that's our lesson for triads. Thank you for listening.